good morning, everyone. This is Joe Henning. I'm the CEO for the Henry County Chamber, and I want to thank you all for joining us this morning for the conversation around Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. And the purpose of this community dialogue or conversation is just so that we can have exactly that, a conversation around social injustice, racism, diversity, and hopefully have some constructive conversations around that we can continue to move Henry County forward. And so we will continue these going forward and look forward to more and more participation and more engagement with the education system, with our faith-based leadership, with the businesses and the employer community. So that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Lincoln Parks, who is with WebMobileFusion and the chair-elect for the Chamber Board. He is our first moderator in this series, and I'm going to come back in a little bit, but I want to welcome Lincoln and his guests and follow their conversation for a bit, and then we'll come back and get any chat that's up in the Facebook Live or on the Zoom chat. So if you are interested, please share some questions in that if you've read the book and want to have a dialogue with us, and we'll bring those up in the last half of the hour. Lincoln, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jay. Really appreciate it. And thanks to the Chamber and all the staff and everyone there that, wanted to put this first dialogue together. I think it was like really important for us, especially with the book Talking to Strangers, that, we talk about it, especially, with the climate that we're in right now. There's so many things going on, but this is a great way, especially in the community, for us to do that. And I have two very special guests with me today. We have Officer Smith from Henry County Police Department. And I wanted to make sure we had someone that represented our law enforcement on today's conversation. And I also have Jay Dockweiler from SouthEdge Church that's going to be representing our faith-based organization. So I just want these gentlemen to, we're going to have a conversation and just talk about this, talk about the book, talk about what's going on and what's happening in our community and in the world. And but before we do that, I wanted them to introduce themselves really quickly. So Officer Smith, I'm going to start with you, and if you don't mind, just share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so again, thank you, Mr. Lincoln, for having me on. I think it's interesting. My son's name is Lincoln, so we got a lot in common there already. But like you said, my name is Harrison Smith. I'm a member of the Henry County Police Department. I've been employed there since 2011. Right now, I'm assigned to our Community Relations Unit, so it's kind of my job and responsibility to communicate to the public, develop programs, and strategize with the community to help make our community safer. It's one thing that I'm really passionate about. I've been a police officer for almost 10 years. I've kind of seen just a little bit of everything. I've been on just about every shift that we've had, and this is something I've wanted to do for a while. And I'm married. My wife's a teacher here in the county. I have a 2-year-old son named Lincoln. I grew up in Henry County. We moved here in 93, so I've been here quite a while. And law enforcement or public safety really has been in my family. My granddad was a police officer. My father was a fireman. So something that I've always wanted to do. And so here I am. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, I really take my hat off to you guys, because you're in the line of fire and danger and everything that's going on every single day. And you guys in Henry County, I can't tell you how great of a job that you're doing. So thank you so much. That's why I wanted to have you on, so you could share some things that you guys are doing to connect with everyone in the community. So thank you for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
And Jay, I'll just turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lincoln. Also, I am very grateful to be able to be part of the conversation and just a part and get things started. I've been, my family and I have been residents of Henry County since 2002. We have a child who's graduated from college, one that's getting ready to graduate from college, another one starting high school. We've been in the area involved in the schools and involved in things, and I've done lots of different things professionally and voluntarily. in my professional career, but I am currently the pastor of the church at SouthEdge in Henry County. We are kind of a different, innovative. We do things a little bit differently than the typical church, but with the same foundations and with the same concerns, just trying to accomplish it with a few different methods. And so I am grateful that I got the chance to meet Lincoln months back and begin to discuss this book, and for now this opportunity for us to be able to talk about it. So thank you, Lincoln.
No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so I know there may be some people on that may not have read the book. So I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis on that. So in today's society, people often find themselves in encounters with complete strangers. Judges have to grant or deny strangers freedom. College students meet a stranger at a party and have to decide whether to give them their phone number. People invest large sums of money based on a total stranger's recommendations. And this book is typically about why we are so bad understanding the strangers we come across. You know, by looking at some of the stories from history and in recent news, you know, I know it gives us an opportunity to understand some of the strategies people use to translate the words and intentions of strangers. And my hope is that we'll learn, you know, how we can better communicate, and even some of the strategies that we have right now, why some of those fail. So there's a few examples in the book. A few of those are Ana Montes was a Cuban spy, and she got information back to Cuba from as an American spy, as a spy for Cuba. Then you have Bernie Madoff. We talked about, you know, you read about that, where he was a part of one of the biggest financial Ponzi schemes there was. Then the Amanda Knox story, where she was a mismatch, you know, based on, you know, her personality. She went to jail based on, you know, her personality and really not the evidence that was there. And I identify with the mismatch, and when we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then Neville Chamberlain going over to Germany to talk to Hitler, thinking that, you know, he can change Hitler's mind, and really thinking that he did do that. But we know what happened there in history. And then the Sandra Bland story. And there's so many other stories in this book that you know, when we start discussing them, you know, it really opens up a good conversation. So my question I wanted to ask you guys, and I'll start with you first, Jay. There's a quote in the book. He said, "Sometimes the best conversations with strangers allow the stranger to remain a stranger." What do you think Malcolm Gladwell means by that? That quote kind of stuck out to me.
I don't know. You're starting with a really challenging quote there, Lincoln. That's not easy, man. Well, I think that if I could put it back in that context, I think that the challenge is that way too often we're interpreting what that stranger said. We're looking for what we want to see, not to fully understand. We're looking to take our turn and make our point. I mean, even in this setting right now, sometimes we'll be thinking about what we're supposed to say next. Wow. Instead of really, what is that person saying and what am I seeing from them? And so when we bring all of our assumptions to the interaction in the first place, and we come looking to maybe affirm our assumptions instead of doubt them, when we come ready to protect ourselves or make our point instead of be vulnerable and let the person come in, we can have conversation after conversation with people and not actually be changed by it, be around them but not really know them. And then claim that somehow we have then the overconfidence. Oh no, we've interacted with them personally, so now we know what people like that are like. We know what people from there are, those people. And unfortunately, then we function as if we know something when we really didn't learn anything.
Right. So, Officer Smith, what's your take on that?
So I think that's very true. I mean, as a law enforcement officer, especially, and during this discussion, I'm going to try to come from the law enforcement side rather than just my personal feelings. But from law enforcement, anytime we're talking with someone and it's official business, we have a goal, right? We're communicating with this person, but we're trying to get something out of them. We're trying to get information. And so when I'm talking to someone, I'm listening for information instead of listening to how they feel or things of that nature. So I think you're right. If I'm too quick to think about my priorities in the conversation, I'm not going to get what I need from that person, or I'm not going to learn nothing about them, and they're going to remain a stranger for me because I don't know them. All I'm trying to do is extract information. And that's really more from the law enforcement side of it, is that we have a mission when we're talking to someone. If we've got a case that we're working on or investigation, I'm trying to get the information that I need to conduct my investigation. And so that's kind of where that comes from. But as far as learning about someone and developing a relationship, I have to talk less and just listen and kind of absorb the information. And then from that point, that we can make a relationship from there.
That makes so much sense, and I'm glad you guys said that. And I'm going to piggyback off of what you said there, Officer Smith. And actually, I can't even imagine. You like you said, you've been working with Henry County Police for quite some time. And if you're walking, you make a stop, someone's stop, and you're coming up to that vehicle, and I can't even imagine how you feel, or how the guys feel at that point in time when you're actually approaching that vehicle, because you don't know what to expect. I know your training has taught you, what to look out for and some things to look out for, but I have no clue. And as a civilian, I have no clue. I want you to share a little bit from your perspective. What does what does that feel like? What are some of the things that you're looking for? Because these are complete strangers that you have no idea.
Right. And traffic stops are known to be one of the dangerous encounters that we can come across. Number one is, a lot of people, I think there's a misconception out there that we see a vehicle and we can see the people inside the vehicle and we can judge what we're going to do based on that. A lot of times, and I'd say at least 90% of the time, I don't even know what the driver looks like. I see a violation and I pull over the vehicle because of the violation. Now, sometimes I can see how many occupants, but even then I don't know whether there's 2 or 3 people. It's a very scary and intense situation. It's something that I've never experienced before I came into law enforcement. And the first time doing it, I was just so nervous about what was going to happen, because we could go through tons of training, but until you get out there and do it in real life, you don't really have a good grasp of how it's going to make you feel. So very nervous, very scared. When you first approach the vehicle, the first thing that we do is we put our thumbprint on the back of the vehicle. A lot of people don't know why we do that. Well, what we're doing is we're marking the vehicle. That way, if we were to get shot and the driver was to drive away, then later we can identify that vehicle by my fingerprint. So that's one reason why you may see an officer come up behind a vehicle and touch the car. They're doing that to leave their fingerprint. So just by that right there, that shows you what we're thinking, what could happen. So when I pull over a vehicle, my training starts to kick in. I'm looking for their hands. Because anytime what we're trained is that if someone's going to hurt you, they're going to do it with their hands. They're either going to have a weapon or they're going to be able to grab you. So we're always looking at what their hands are doing. And so we try to watch that. Sometimes if they got their hand kind of hidden, we may say, hey, let me see your hands, just so I know. That's the reason why, is because we know that if someone's going to hurt us, it's going to come from their hands. So it's a very scary and intense situation. Over years and experience, you kind of develop more comfort with it. But you'll see with the younger officers, they do it by the book. They're very almost robotic in a way.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to pull over a vehicle, I'm kind of more relaxed, and I can talk to people a little bit better. I can communicate what I want because I'm not as nervous and I'm not as scared about what's going to happen.
Right. And that is so important. And a lot of people have, don't realize, they don't know that, look, you're a human, you have a family, and you are one, looking out to protect yourself and make sure that the person that you pull over is safe as well. So, that is so critically important. So thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people don't realize, and I have a lot of friends that are in law enforcement also, and we've had these, conversations, and that's why we talk about it. So I wanted to bring that to light to let people know that, you know, when you are approaching a vehicle, that the feeling that you have, and that's coming directly from an officer. So Jay, I wanted to ask you from your perspective, you know, if an officer is coming up to you, what has been, you know, your experience, you know, with that, if you've ever had that experience?
Well, sure. I think that, I mean, the challenge for anybody that doesn't really have crime as a normal part of their life or day is very anxious in that moment. What did I do? How did I do? How is this going to go? Am I going to be understood? Obviously, you know, if you're calling the police on your behalf because something's happened to you, it's an entirely different interaction than if you're either unaware or you're aware. I've done something wrong and got caught, and I feel guilty and I feel bad. And is this going to be a warning, or is this going to? So you have all that tension that already creates a crisis. And I think that that's where the book itself can speak to lots of ways where that interaction, or any interaction, that in a crisis, in a moment of uncertainty, we're less likely to learn anything. We're less likely to listen. We're more likely to default to all of our assumptions. Or as Officer Smith might be saying, like, I'm going to default to my training when I'm just starting out, because I'm going to do this by the book because that's the safest way for me. That's the most successful way for me. And so I think that's the case on the receiving end of those kind of things too, is that individual, if they've had bad experiences or if there is other things going on in their life, the temptation in that moment is to default to all my assumptions and not really listen and not really watch, and therefore maybe make mistakes and not be so transparent, using a word in the book. Maybe look much more nervous because I look, and therefore look guilty, than that I am just shaken because I'm already late and whatever it is, or I can't believe I did this again. I don't have this money to pay this fine, whatever it might be.
Right. And I can tell you, and I spoke about this earlier about the mismatch with Amanda Knox. I really, when going through that story, I really resonated with that, because for me, you know, I have something called hyperhidrosis. So hyperhidrosis is excessive sweating. So excessive sweating, and I have that in my palms. So while someone would just be normal, you would have normal butterflies, or even just getting on, you know, just even something like this, just getting on this this webinar, you know, you may have normal butterflies, you know, for somebody, but for me, that shows through my palms. So my palms excessively sweat. I can be, you know, just a little bit nervous. I can't be nervous at all. But when I'm even more nervous, then it comes out of my palms. And when we were talking, when I read the story of Amanda Knox, I really resonated with that, because, you know, how she was mismatched, how she reacted to questions. And I could only put myself in that situation and say, you know, would I look guilty, you know, because I may be trying to hide my hands, or in my mind, what I'm thinking is, man, I don't want someone to see my sweaty palms. I don't want them to, and that may make me look more nervous than I really am. And then in turn, that could, you know, it could escalate from that point, you know, if that's an issue. So that's a really good point. Jay, so I wanted to ask you, at church, what do you do, you know, when strangers, you know, come to church, and, you know, it's the first time coming there. I know when I went to church for the first time, you know, it's kind of nerve-wracking. What do you do to really welcome strangers?
Right. Well, I guess, you know, on a couple of different levels, when we talk about welcoming somebody, there's kind of there's at least two levels for me thinking about what welcoming means. There's kind of the hospitality or guest services of an event that any of us would have if we are just inviting somebody in, having somebody over for a meal, whatever it might be, to receive someone once. There's a second level of welcoming or not welcoming that has to do with what it means, especially in a church setting, but a lot of organizations can think about this related to their customers or members, but we can also apply it to our families, which is this person becoming a family member. So what does it mean to be sensitive to be open to be hospitable to receive that person and make them feel welcome? But that's something different on two different levels. I think about it kind of if I have two older children, if my daughter was going to, and this is not an actual story, but if my daughter was going to bring a roommate home for Thanksgiving, and say our family, had a 3 generations old peanut butter pie that we have every single year at Thanksgiving, but her roommate is allergic to peanuts. We would be careful to make sure, understand that this year we're not having the pie. If we need to warn any family members that are going to make us think about it, like, we understand out of love, the preference is for the guest. The preference is for the person who doesn't always fit and is more strange to us and the stranger in that situation. But it's different if my son was bringing home a fiance, and we know that this person's becoming part of the family for the rest of our lives. And what does it mean then to say, what does it mean to welcome that person in and say, if you're different, if you're strange to us, if you don't look the same, talk the same, do the same, what does it mean for us to really be open that we benefit from you because we need to be open to change, not you're welcome as long as you fit in.
Right.
And so whether it's our families or whether it's a church family or whether it's an organization or a community, I think on both of those levels. And then the last thing for me, I'm very sensitized to that, at least for Christian church circles, we follow Jesus. And so my question is, Jesus teaches a parable about what you have done for the least of these, you have in essence done to him. What you have not done for the least of these, you've done to him. So if every person that is a visitor, every person who is a stranger, if I treat them the way I would treat Jesus, who doesn't have my same skin tone and doesn't speak English and I'm not sure how he would be dressed, and I'm not sure what kind of wealth he would bring with him. If I can treat them in that way, then I'm probably doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So a little bit less strategic than philosophical, but I think that the heart of it is, am I to love the least of these as if they're Jesus, whatever that takes for however long it takes. And if I'm not ready to do that, what has to change in me so one day I can be hospitable?
Wow. Yeah, that thank you for sharing that, Jay, because that really speaks to the heart of what we need to look to be when we're communicating with others and trying to understand other people that like you said don't look like us or don't speak like us. Another question I wanted to ask you guys was, from a media perspective, we see what's going on in the media. We see a lot of things that may be sensationalized, or and there are people that are on different sides of the spectrum. How do we compartmentalize what's going on in the media and not allow that to affect us when we're seeing people that don't look like us? What are some things that maybe you do, each of you? What are some things that you do to try and remain neutral and not go from one side to the other? Officer Smith, I'll start with you on that.
Well, I try to, with today's society, we live in a social media society, and I can open up Facebook right now and it would be flooded with stories across the nation, across the world, of things that are going on, and probably most of that would probably be negative. So I have to do a very good job of not letting that get to me or affect my job or my feelings towards my job, because every day I have to get up and put on a uniform and go out and do my duty without having to worry about, what's going on the other side of the country. I still have a job to do, and I still feel like my job is to go out and help people. And so I have to continue to do that. I can't let what other things affect me. I try not to get too wrapped up in media or even the news, because I know that just like a lot of organizations, news media outlets can be very biased. They're going to put out what they want to put out to get the most clicks and get the most attention. That's their job. I don't blame them for it. But that doesn't mean that they're always putting out truth. So anytime I see a story or I see something happen, I try to do my own research on it. I try to look it up from the source and try to see what's going on, because news, the media can word something in a way that takes me down a path that, maybe isn't truth, just because of the way they worded it. So if I could go back and get it from the source, then, hey, this is actually what really happened. It's not as bad or it's not as good as the news is making it out to be. So I try to stay away from it. When you're talking about the social media stuff, when the George Floyd incident occurred, I was actually in Florida visiting family, and I saw the initial post about it when it came out. And of course, I was sick to my stomach watching it because I'm seeing this person lying dead on the street with a knee in his neck, and that's not anything that we're trained to do. But then I saw what happened after that, and I felt myself, it was like the weight of the world was kind of on my shoulders. And here I am, had nothing to do with this case. I don't work in Minneapolis. I work in Henry County. And here I am feeling like I'm taking the brunt of what's going on because I had people texting me and flooding me. So I have to be very careful about how I respond to things and how I look at things, and more for my mental health than anything. So, but I just have to be very, very careful about what I share and what I put out on social media and what I judge, news media outlets and how they put things out.
Yeah, and that's critically important. Like you said, you being able to sort of be in your own space where you're understanding from your perspective what that looks like, and doing your own research. And because I know you do have a lot of friends and other folks that like you said, they would contact you, and you feeling a lot of pressure from other folks. But that's why I wanted to have you on, which is so important for us to share, is that Henry County, we are privileged, and we are privileged because, there are guys like yourself, and others that I know that are on the force in law enforcement in Henry County that have an open view, and also look at things from a perspective that isn't either one side or the other, but you can sort of put that in a way where it doesn't affect you negatively. So I just want to thank you for what you're doing. So Jay, what is your take on the media, and how do you handle that?
Right. Well, I think that the media part really speaks to the underlying thing that I got out of the book, which is that our challenge is strangers are obviously strange to us, but that we bring these assumptions to them.
Right.
And when we bring those assumptions, those are assumptions that we probably didn't all create in our head. Whether we got them in our upbringing, whether we got them from our experiences in our relationships, there's something that obviously gets reinforced. So the challenge is, using it, we get overconfident that our little bit of information gives us accurate assumptions about other people.
That's right.
And then without trying, because we get busy in life and we do other things throughout life, we don't recognize how often those assumptions are reaffirmed and reaffirmed and reaffirmed, and that they won't get changed. One of the things we see in the book, you can't just doubt an assumption once, or you can't just doubt an assumption a little bit, because you'll still find the logical way to get back to your assumption, because it's what you feel safest at. It's what you feel successful at. You would already think different if you thought it was a better way to think. So the only way to actually get to a place where we'll really doubt our assumptions enough that we might change what we believe about somebody or some group of people or about something and really see the whole truth. The only way to do that is to purposefully pursue information that would make us doubt our assumptions. Experiences that would make us doubt our assumptions, relationships that would make us doubt our assumptions.
Right.
And that takes effort on our part that we don't usually give. We're not necessarily trying to reaffirm our assumptions, but we don't do it. So that happens in media. Most people watch media, read media that already affirms what they already believe. They don't purposefully watch the network that they think is lying so that they might get some truth. They don't purposefully ask somebody who's not them, how do you see or feel the situation? And so over time, as Officer Smith said, it may not be, I can be frustrated that media spends way too much time in fear instead of truth in order to manipulate and engage us. I can recognize everyone's coming from a vantage point, and it's financially in their best interest to give a slant, to have their version so that they can get advertising for that group of people. But when it comes to us, I think the challenge for us is to pursue information and relationships and experiences that would help me doubt my assumptions that my friends are still going to make jokes about, that my friends are still going to enforce, that have been so invisible to me that I've never questioned because it never negatively impacted me. And so it's really how we use media instead of letting media use us.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be negative and it's going to be fearful and it's going to be slanted. But if all I do is always turn on the same channel, the same radio channel, the same TV channel, the same newspaper, if all I do is talk about it with the same group of friends, I'm probably never going to doubt that my assumptions about that are the right ones. And therefore, those other people are just wrong. And so strangers are going to be enemies instead of strangers being the people who I actually learn how they, walking through it in their context, might see it differently and also true.
That's powerful because, you know, we're in a society nowadays where, you know, if you disagree with somebody, then you are an enemy, and that's really how we should not be thinking, because we have to learn how to agree to disagree, and know that there are going to be differences based on, you know, multiple factors: how you were raised, where you were raised, you know, how your parents interacted with you, what you heard. So there's many different factors that go into, you know, an individual, and it really is and truly up to us to look across the fence and look at people, and like you said, be intentional with creating relationships or building relationships with people that are different than we are. So I wanted to pivot a little bit on the communication aspect here. Officer Smith, I know that there are some things that you guys are doing, and maybe a lot of people don't know about. What are some things that, you know, Henry County is doing to help bridge the communication gap?
So here in Henry County, we have a lot of programs that we offer to the public. And these are programs that are open to citizens of Henry County or people that work here. And these are completely free. These are things that we fund, that we give back to the community. As far as communication goes, I could think of two specific programs that we do on a regular basis. The first one would be the Neighborhood Watch program. This is probably something that we do the most. What it is we'll have a neighborhood or HOA will come to us and say, hey, we have problems in our neighborhood. And it could be from speeding neighbors, loud music, suspicious vehicles, or kids playing at the pool when the pool is closed. It could be a number of issues, but they'll come to us and say, what can we do about these issues? So what we do is we establish the Neighborhood Watch program in their community. And our mission with this is to establish a communication from law enforcement to this community, but also it's to grow the communication within that community, because we'll ask them, we'll have a neighborhood watch meeting. It's the first thing that we do. We'll get them all together and we'll talk about what a neighborhood watch is. And I'll ask them, I'll say, who in here can tell me the first name of your neighbor in front of you, to the left of you, and to the right of you? And you would be so surprised. We'll have less than half will raise their hand. I'm like, how is this possible? You live in a community with a house that's less than 100 yards from you and you don't know their name. We need to get back to being neighborly. What does it mean to be neighborly? We need to look after each other. If you don't know the people around you, how are they to know when something's not right, when something's going wrong? You know, when I go out of town, I like to let my neighbors know. I say, hey, I'm going out of town for a week. You mind watching my house?
Yeah.
That's a very important thing. So when you establish that neighborhood watch program, you're not only getting them involved with each other, they're developing relationships with each other, and they're almost like governing themselves, because you may have someone that will call about a suspicious vehicle that's been parked in front of their house for 3 days. They'll call 911 about that. Well, if they have a neighborhood watch, instead of calling 911, they'll call their neighborhood watch captain or their block captain and say, hey, did you see this vehicle? And then that block captain will go to all the people under that person. And then usually one person will say, oh, that's my brother's car. He's staying for the weekend. Well, now we've just completely alleviated a citizen police encounter just from that. So neighborhood watch program is a big thing that we do and we promote. The second one would be the Citizens Police Academy. It is an 11-week program. It's completely free. You can sign up on our website, Henry County Government. and it's an 11-week program, and it's on Tuesday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. We do them twice a year. And what this does is every Tuesday night we meet, and they get to learn, the people in the class get to learn a different aspect of law enforcement. And they get to learn everything from our detectives division, from like the special operations, which is like K9 and our heat officers. They get to learn about crime scene. They get to do a ride along, which I would suggest any citizen out there that wants to learn about police or what we do, you can go do a ride along. All you have to do is fill out an application at our police department, and you can do a ride along. So the CPA, they get to learn a lot about what we do and what we're looking for. And we found that the people that start will have a lot of questions about what we do. And then by the time it's over and they graduate from we have a graduation and they get a certificate, and they have a better understanding and appreciation for what these officers do every single day. So those are just two programs that we have that kind of establish that communication to our community.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those, because you know, some of those, me personally, I wasn't aware of. I'm sure, you know, there are a couple people on here that may not have been aware of those programs that are implemented and that you guys have implemented. So that's thank you for sharing those for us. Jay, do you have you know, what was for you in reading the book? What was one story that kind of, you know, stood out to you that really, you know, help you to sort of bring some of these the communication concepts together?
I think that what was most powerful for me is at the very beginning when he is talking about our overconfidence in assuming that we could understand other people. There's the little game that is played with letters and finish these words. And it was very interesting. I think they quoted a crazy, and I wrote it down. I don't have it memorized, but wrote it down. Cronin's illusion of asymmetric insight, which merely just means I'm really confident that I can understand from just a little bit of information exactly who you are, but I am also confident you couldn't possibly understand me because I'm so complex. Mm. And so when he's first telling that story and saying, if you filled out these words this way, what might that assume is going on inside your head or your heart? You know, are you a really evil person? Are you a really depressed person? And that people looking at that test, having taken it thinking, well, that doesn't describe me at all. But minutes later, giving them the same thing with the examples of what other people say and how confident they were, they fully understand those other people and what they're going through. And so more than the individual stories that start to show some of the assumptions and agendas, and sometimes when it's in a work situation, it was much easier for me to go, that is the underlying problem for most of us. Oh, I know what those people on the screen are doing. I know what I would do if I was in their place. I know what, like, no, you don't. Right. You don't. And you are overconfident and you oversimplify everything to try to make it work for you. And that's exactly what I would need to press against in my own life, and what I hope we'll all press against in our lives. The assumption that our assumptions are much more right than they are, and that people who aren't like us and don't act transparent like us, that really just means they don't act right according to me. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that it has anything to do with who they really are. And so that's really, more than anything, what shook me with, that was true through every situation.
That's true. That's true. And I'm glad you shared that. And I'm glad, you know, you both shared from your experiences, and I wanted to share real quick from the in the corporate structure. You know, I know there may be some people that are on that are, you know, maybe a part of a nonprofit, or, you know, a part of an organization or something like that. And I know a lot of companies, what they typically do to try and break down that communication gap is to have some sort of, it might be like a personality test or a personality assessment that sort of, so they can try to identify, you know, what kind of personality does this person have? You know, how can I best be able to communicate with them, you know, when they're coming onto the job, and how would, you know, me, you know, being different from this person, you know, what is the best way to communicate with them? And I think while that does do a little, I think we still need to go a little bit further, in understanding others. Some things that I wrote down, communication, in the corporate structure is, it's still a huge problem as well. And we talked from law enforcement and in the religious sector, but in corporate as well, that is a huge misunderstanding. And then another thing is perception is not really reality. Because again, when we're looking at something, we look at it one way, but that doesn't mean that's the reality of things. And then we are bringing a lot of baggage in from life experiences that we've had in the past. So, I really appreciate this conversation, because I think, where the experiences that you guys have been sharing with everyone, I think if you hadn't read the book, I urge you to go out and read it, especially the audio version of the book as well. The audio it brings in a whole nother aspect with interviews and music, and so it's a I was on an 8-hour drive, and just listening to the book again for 8 hours, I picked up a lot of different things that I didn't pick up the first time. So I know, Joe, you jumped back on here.
Sure.
I know you had some you may have had some questions from the audience that they wanted to ask us.
I do. I want to thank you all, Lincoln. I think you set the bar so high that future discussions are going to be hard to match. This was a great set of panelists, and that's what we're seeing in the feedback. I do want to mention, since you opened with that, Story on the Square is our great partner with us with the book, and they do have a few copies left. If anybody out there is interested in picking up the book, Story on the Square, and McDonough has that. I echoed the audio made a huge difference, especially as you're going through and trying to figure out the perspectives of many of the individuals in the stories. And so as you could hear the actual audio of it and hear the fear and some of the other emotions that are being played out, it really brings those points home. I want to talk a little bit. Officer Smith, I'm gonna pose this to you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it kind of comes out of one of the questions that has come up. And they said, I appreciate the officer's comments. Is he able to understand the perspective of African Americans, and is he concerned for his safety as African Americans are concerned with theirs, and for all the protests? And so I ask you that because I think as we're discussing conversations, I think we also need to be discussing stereotyping. And I think what their question is getting to is the stereotyping of our African Americans. But I think there's also the counter to that, where if we see one bad police officer, we've now said that all police are bad. We're going to defund them and all of that. And so I want to open that up for you, officer, and if there's any insight you want to offer and share.
Yeah, so I don't want there to be any confusion when I talk about officer safety or kind of what is our goal. Our first goal is to make sure everyone goes home safe. I don't know an officer, I've never met an officer that enjoys that much conflict, that enjoys being part of a use of force. I think that's a big misconception, that officers just are looking to get in a fight, and that's not true. Most officers that I know want to go through their shift, handle their calls, do what they need to do, protect the community, and then go home. Our number one priority is safety. And that's not just for me, that's for everyone. That could be anyone that I come in contact. Doesn't matter their race, gender, their religious beliefs. I want to make sure everyone goes home, because the fact is that as officers, we serve the community, okay? We don't serve one group of people. We serve everyone in that community. So we serve everybody the same. One thing when I started this, in this job, the thing that we were taught, by my FTO was treat everybody the same and treat everybody the way that you would want to be treated. And so that's something that we have to do a better job of, letting other people understand what our goal is. Our goal is to go home safe, not just for me, but also you as well. When we stop a vehicle for a minor traffic violation, we're trying to see what's going on. We're trying to address that situation, I don't know any officers that actually want a use of force to come out of that. That is a no-win situation. If an officer has to shoot someone, that's not a win situation for us or for them. That's a no-win situation.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to share with you, as you were sharing that, the hearts were going crazy over on Facebook. Everybody's liking, they appreciate that sentiment from you. So thank you. There's another couple of questions, and I think we can all kind of answer this, but I'm going to pose it to Jay first, and then we can move from there. Let's see, I just lost it. My apologies. I love Jay's statement that our assumptions about people are what we find safe. I find that I have those close to me who only allow information into their sphere if it fits their comfortable narrative. How do I speak with them about this in a way that doesn't create unnecessary conflict? So we have to move into the discomfort if we're going to grow, but how do we handle that with others that have to force them to the discomfort?
Well, I would say that that is the challenge, is that if at least from my perspective, the deepest truth about human beings as we know them is that we are both fear and love. And because we come from a place of being scared, am I enough? Will I be enough for this situation? How do I compare to others? Will I be safe? Will I be successful? That's why advertisers use fear. That's why political pundits traffic in fear. That's why political parties say, be so afraid of the other guy, not we have good ideas. Because we're trafficking in the deepest recesses of who we are, we're afraid. And so part of it is understanding that fear that for the person that we love, the person we care for, the person whose mind we'd like to change, that some of that is coming out of genuine fear. And to change my opinion would be to change the thing that has made me feel at least this safe and at least this successful this long. And so that's hard. What we need to speak to, though, for ourselves, and maybe this is the best thing we can speak to ourselves, is what is that my identity? Do I understand that I am loved, that from my perspective as a pastor, that I am made in the image of God and worthy of love and belonging, and that fear that I'm not going to be enough is exaggerating who I really actually am. I don't have to prove myself to you, that I am not having to protect myself by dominating you because you will get me. To come to that place of dealing with my fear by willing to be vulnerable, willing to believe that I'm secure even if you're powerful, that I don't have to lose for you to win, but that if I do lose so that you could win, that would also be a healthy thing, because maybe I've been winning disproportionately for what's fair. And so for all of those things, we just need to recognize that's really, really hard, but that is really, really the core of it. Most people who need strangers to be enemies so that enemies lose is because the only other option I can think of in my head is that means I lose. And if I lose, I'm not safe. And so it's competition and comparison with each other instead of being a family together. Instead of saying it's all of our kids who are being educated, it's all of our families who are having health or safety or justice. It is me against you, and at least I'm looking out for me. And that's really hard, especially in a nation where we pride ourselves on our individualism more than our community.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I appreciate the mention of vulnerability, because that is a huge piece of it that we all have to get to and not necessarily embrace it, but be comfortable enough with that vulnerability that we can grow and move on to the next phase for us. I think the other great piece is the whole win-lose mindset that we all grow up with. We all are grown up with the win-lose. If I'm going to win, somebody else has to lose. And as we look at making this change and shifting the narrative to inclusion in that, we've got to let go of that, because there's opportunities for us both to win. And I think that's a great takeaway. I appreciate that. Lincoln or Officer Smith, anything you want to share within that as well, that comfort, discomfort conversation piece?
Well, I'll just say, we know that this is just going to be uncomfortable. It's just going to be an uncomfortable conversation that you're having, especially when you have so many factors coming at you that you have to sort of push to the side and sort of look at this person we're all human individuals. We think differently. You know, we do things differently. But in the one sense of the word, we are all humans. We bleed the same. We look the same. I mean, we don't look the same, but we are all the same. We're all one. And I think it's a very, very difficult conversation to have, because I've been in quite a few conversations with folks that we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. But that doesn't mean I still don't love them at the end of the day. You know, at the end of the day, I know, like Jay mentioned, love is the one thing that I think might be missing in a lot of the conversations that we have, because, you know, when we're trying to get our point across and they're trying to get their point across, and everybody thinks that they're right, but it's not to really hurt the other individual. I think what we need to do now is just plant a seed. And I don't want to, you know, I don't want to change anybody to my point. What I really want to get across is love. That's really the bottom line. That's really all it boils down to. Because if you have that in your heart, then, you know, you can disagree and then still look across and give that person a hug or give them a high five or a handshake, and still go about it saying, you know what, I might not have agreed with this individual, but man, I really truly respect them because of, you know, how they feel and what's in their heart. So, you know, that's my 2 cents on it.
Great. Thank you. I want to, as we begin to wrap up, we've got about 9 minutes left. I want to again let you all know that are following us on Facebook or on Zoom. Story on the Square does have a few more copies of the book left if you're looking for it. Again, the audio book is great for the some of the conversations in that happen in the book. If you want to do both, it's kind of great to read along, but also hear it. We've talked about stereotyping. We've talked about the discomfort. We've talked about that love and respect. And I think as we close this piece, what are some of those final thoughts that each one of you has on the conversation today? What are our next steps? I would love to see this go beyond the walls of those of us that are participating today and get out into into our different faith-based organizations, into our corporations, into the schools, and have these conversations so that we can begin that healing process. And so I'm going to make this offer, and you can tell me offline if you're not into it. But if there's anybody that's watching this today, tomorrow, whenever they find it, and you want more information or you want to speak to one of these individuals, please contact the chamber here. You can email us, you can give us a phone call, whatever works for you, and we will then pass that message on to Lincoln and Jay and Officer Smith and let them know of your inquiry, whether it's participation in your organization's discussion or maybe some more follow-up in that you're looking for. But we will act as that middle person to make sure that they get that information and share that with you. So that being said, I'm going to turn it back to you, Lincoln, as we wrap up with the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. So, you know, I know for us, and you know, I want each of you to just have a couple closing words here. But I know for me, the best way, you know, that we could start is by what we're doing here today. You know, having a conversation and really stop making assumptions. And really know, you know, if we can take this, Joe, I know you mentioned, you know, we're going to take, you know, this and really go into the schools, go into a corporate environment. You know, I know Officer Smith mentioned a couple programs that they have. We need to continue to communicate this over and over and over again. Because I know when I went to corporate America, when I was in corporate America and I just went back and forth to work, I didn't know what was going on in Henry County. So there's a lot of people right now that don't know about what we're doing right now. And I think we just need to beat a dead horse. We need to continue to over communicate what we're doing until everybody knows and wants to be a part if they do, if they so choose to. So I'm just gonna turn it back over to you guys real quick. Officer Smith, if you wanted to go first and just your closing comments.
Well, again, thank you, Mr. Parks, for having me. I actually enjoy these conversations a lot. I get to meet new people, and um, it's funny. Just us talking in the last hour, we have so much in common. I have hyperhidrosis as well. So when you said that, I know a lot of people were like, "What was that?" But I have that as well. Um, the main thing that I've taken away from this, the book, and also this discussion, is that from the law enforcement side, I don't like to particularly talk about cases that have happened in other places, just because I simply don't know all the facts about it. I wasn't there, so I wasn't a part of it, so I don't really like to discuss those details. But I'll say this: I'll say a lot of the cases I've seen, I think patience and sympathy can go a long way from a law enforcement standpoint. If we can have a little bit of patience and have sympathy towards the people that we're dealing with, I think we're going to be better off for it. I think we can do it. I think there's a safe way that we could do it and still maintain that officer citizen safety. But I think patience and sympathy is the one thing that I've taken away from the conversation. And quick plug real quick. I want to tell everybody how they can find those programs and how they can sign up and get more information. So the website is www.co.henry.ga.us. If you go, that's the Board of Commissioners website. If you go on that website, there's a law enforcement tab for Henry County Police Department. You basically go through the tabs and all of our programs are laid out. You can actually go in there and compliment a police officer. If you have a good experience with an officer, if it's a positive interaction, go in there and give them a compliment. Trust me, we get plenty of complaints, but that goes a long way with the officers that are out there doing the right things and when we get motivation, when people tell us we're doing a good job, it makes us want to do our job better. And so even me, I need to make sure I'm telling the other officers how good of a job they're doing. Because if we want to keep this community safe, we have to have good officers working for our police department. But thank you so much for having us. Find those programs, sign up, get involved.
Thank you.
Jay?
Thanks, Lincoln. The book kind of ends with this thought that when we have a bad interaction with a stranger, our temptation is to blame the stranger. And what would it be to not give into the fear that leads us to blame others because we can't take responsibility for it ourselves? There's a whole lot of hot button words, and that's why I would choose to use the word assumption, even instead of stereotype or bias or racism or whatever it might be, because we all have assumptions and we're overconfident that they're probably right because they've been working for us. And they're assumptions about people, and they're assumptions about how the world works and what systems do or do not need to be fixed and what the results. And so I would just ask for us to have, along with that patience, the humility to recognize, I don't really understand all I think I understand. I don't have it all right. And in lots of things, there might not be things that are as right. And then I'm not as likely to get destroyed, hurt, broken if I validate that other person. And so what I'm trying to do, what I've been trying to do for years, and now I kind of give words to it reading this book, but what I would encourage all of us to do is to, on purpose, be willing to be vulnerable enough to pursue information that would make me doubt my assumptions, especially my assumptions that are hurtful, lessening, critical of, judgmental in ways that maybe I shouldn't be. That I would pursue relationships, that I'd pursue experiences, and I'd pursue information that would help me in a healthy way keep doubting my assumptions so that I have enough evidence that maybe I need to change some of them. And if not, at least I understand where the other person's coming from. But that I have to be willing to do that because, as we've recognized in this last several months, when the world stops and forces us to stop, we pay attention to things that even in the last 4 months, we may not have paid any attention to if we were all watching 17 ball games and going to the beach all the time. Yeah. And so we have to fight against busyness and distraction to say people matter more than this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think two quick takeaways as I wrap my piece up. Officer Smith, I want to thank you. I want everybody to realize how wonderful the police department in the county is, that they are being vulnerable enough to give you the permission to participate in this conversation, because there are many police forces in this country that are will not do that because they're afraid of where that goes. And I think this is a key takeaway for our county and the strength that the force has in that you are authorized to do this today, or approved to do it. And then Jay, I think that's the key as we look at how we change those assumptions that we hold internally, and that it goes back to that fear, and it's that fear of failure, that if I'm going to try to make this change, but I'm not necessarily sure how to do it, try. You get more credit for trying if you're doing it with your heart than just ignoring it and keeping on with those assumptions that you have. And so I think people are much more willing to forgive your failure if you've at least tried to make that change and ask for help. There's plenty of people out there. I know that coming in here just over a year ago, obviously I'm from the North. I'm picking up the y'all, but this was a huge change for us. And I can tell you that it has been amazing, just the community as a whole, no matter what part of that community you look at. It has been very welcoming, and I think that's where we're at such a good point that we can have these conversations and move everything forward because we have a great community. So again, thank you, Lincoln. I'll throw it back to you to wrap us up if you would, and we'll be getting out the information for the next book and the next date for the conversation, probably either later this week or very early next.
Okay. Well, thank you all again, Joe. I really appreciate the chamber kicking this conversation off, and we are going to continue this conversation going forward. I can't say enough about the chamber and your staff and everything that you guys are doing there, because we've seen since you came in over a year ago, you've been kicking butt and taking names. So you've been doing some really, really good things for the chamber. Again, Officer Smith, Jay, thank you for being on today. It was very, very good to start this dialogue, and especially with this book. And I know we're going to continue that. So, I'm sure people will be reaching out to you guys to continue those conversations. And please do just circle back into us if you need us for anything. I know that I'll be needing you guys in other conversations as well. So, and then to everyone that joined today, thank you guys for taking the time out to really want to, talk about this and learn more about what we're doing in Henry County, because we are a model citizen based off of all different types of individuals. And what we can do is show the world what we're doing and how we're handling each one of these situations. So thanks again for you guys for joining, and I appreciate everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
All right, you guys take care.
Thank you.